Welcome to House Rules, a podcast from the Utah House of Representatives. I'm Matthew Gwynn. I represent District 6, which is Northwest Weber County and Southeast Box Elder County. I'm here today with President Brad Mortensen of Weber State University, my alma mater. I'm also here with Director of Utah Department of Corrections, Garcia. What I want to talk about is this employment pipeline that we've been talking about for the last few months that we're hoping to create in the state of Utah, so that we can shore up the occupation of corrections in Utah. It's an occupation, as you well know, Jared, and I started out in corrections, that is kind of the lesser known, lesser loved, kind of ill-forgotten career in public safety, and I think it's actually one of the most important, most valuable careers in public safety. And as we see this culture shift both on the streets and both in corrections, as we see this generational culture shift and we talk about de-escalation, we're paying a lot of attention to mental health and reentry services now. I think now's a good time to maybe include how we recruit people for a career in corrections as part of that overall discussion as we look at this problem holistically. And so I just want to talk about how this came about, and that was literally kind of a tongue-in-cheek conversation I had with you, President.
Right.
If I remember it correctly. So
Over some Chick-fil-A.
Over some Chick-fil-A. And thank you, Kate, for that, by the way. I appreciate the Chick-fil-A. So I remember I was having a discussion with someone, I don't remember who it was, but someone had commented that that students in high school can actually graduate with certificates in EMS, Emergency Medical Services. And I found that fascinating because, you know, not too long ago, we changed the age of those that could enter corrections to 19 years old. And it's also my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they can actually get jobs in the sheriff's offices or even in the prison as early as 18. They're just not doing sworn work. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And so, you know, I adjunct up Weber State. I have a coworker who teaches concurrent enrollment, and Weber State is well known for concurrent enrollment in the state of Utah, and nationally has most concurrent enrollment students, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah, the largest for any four-year school in the country.
So, and that's amazing, and they're right where I live, and I enjoy being a part of Weber State University, and I thought, well, what can we do to actually make it better? And so I came to you and I asked, hey, how would you feel if we created a concurrent enrollment program that allowed high school students to graduate with their Special Functions Officer certification? And the Special Functions Officer certification is just that foundational, mostly academic certification, right? We already have law enforcement classes in high school that they're already getting concurrent enrollment credit for. So, you know, me being naive at times, I was under the understanding that it probably wouldn't take much effort to kind of add that SFO certification as part of the process and give that to them in high school and actually make them employable for Department of Corrections, whether it be the county sheriff's offices or the Utah State Prison, almost right out of high school. Because right now, even to be in to be a police officer, you have to be 21 years old. And prior to changing the age to 19, you had to be 21 years old. 3 years is a long time kids can get in trouble, and they may never, ever be able to be a law enforcement officer ever again because of some of those decisions. And so if we capture them early, we get them interested early, there's less time for them to make large mistakes that can affect them throughout their life, and we can give them a living wage and benefits almost as soon as they walk off the stage with their diploma. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about. I know that was a lot of information. Jared, if you wouldn't mind, how long have you been the director now?
Oh, since I was appointed in February, so I guess we're coming up on 6 months.
Okay, so but you're aware of the audits that occurred
Absolutely,
under the previous director, and so you know some of those were scathing, but I think they were also sorely needed, right? And fortunately, through those audits, we've improved services, we've improved quality of life both for inmates and employees at Department of Corrections, and we've seen staffing levels actually come back to where they're manageable. Overtime is coming down. And the last time I had heard, I don't remember the number of 19-year-olds that were hired, but the retention rate was well over 80%, which I think is phenomenal, especially for such young kids, right? And so I kind of wanted to speak about that and the need for a long, sustainable workforce in corrections. And then, Brad, if you wouldn't mind, can you kind of talk about more about how you got involved and maybe the progress we've made since we started this conversation?
Yeah. So it really did start that conversation we had in February, I think, during the legislative session, where you brought up this issue and concern of, how can we accelerate and capture the interest of high school students to look into this corrections pathway, which, like you said, is a really valuable career opportunity for the students and also very needed from a public safety and just an overall correctional perspective. So we thrive on doing that at Weber State when folks from industry across the board come to us with some type of workforce need, and whether that's in construction or healthcare or anything, we really try to talk with employers and find out what the needs are and how we can accelerate that pathway to find that. So we went back and talked with our folks, and we're fortunate that we not only have the criminal justice program at Weber State, but also have our police academy. And so getting those folks together and the folks who work with the school districts on concurrent enrollment programs figured out pretty quickly that we can offer and package those academic courses that lead to that special function certification while students are in high school, really without too much problem at all. And the challenge we see with concurrent enrollment a lot of times is that it's very prevalent and there's a lot of it, but students, when they're in high school and the high school counselors don't know how to present a package for students so that they can see a pathway. But working with the State Board of Education and our folks who specialize in that, we've really been able to build out that pathway now. And there was one course in criminal justice that our criminal justice faculty are creating that to be a concurrent enrollment course now. So we can deliver all three of those courses for the academic side of that certification in the high schools as a concurrent enrollment class, which, by the way, is $5 a credit hour. So there's very little cash outlay for students to be able to take advantage of that. And then working with the folks at Post, that will streamline into the additional certifications that they can get to work beyond corrections if that's desired down the road. And so it was honestly a pretty easy conversation. Sometimes we don't know what opportunities are out there until someone will present them to us, and that opens up the door. And then our folks are great at walking through and figuring out what we can do to meet the need. And so it's honestly been a pretty easy project and process, but we wouldn't have known if you hadn't kind of identified the opportunity. So
I got to admit, I was kind of taken back, right? Because I kind of approached you. I was quasi-serious, but also kind of tongue-in-cheek. I want to see where this goes, right? And no resistance from you. And foundationally, it sounds like 95% of the infrastructure is there. And so what I'm hearing is a kid about to graduate high school can potentially, when this is done, if we get this pulled off, we'll get college credit, high school credit, pay $15, and be employable as soon as they walk across the stage.
Well, they might have to pay 45.
45.
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
9 credits.
9
three
credits,
three
okay.
3 credit classes.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, for $45, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. Great. And then, we pride ourselves a lot in making sure there's a return on investment for students. And, this one's going to be off the charts because the jobs that they can then get as correctional officers and all the benefits and everything that entails, and then in a meaningful way, know that they're contributing back to society. That just pushes all the buttons of how we try to help our students to be set up to be, successful in the workplace, successful as citizens, and it's exciting. It's what we are there to do.
If you're comfortable and willing, can you kind of talk about how Weber School District responded when you came to them and said, "Hey, look, we're here, but we want to move the needle just a little bit, but we want to move it enough to get them this certification"? How responsive were they?
So there is a whole statewide initiative going on right now that's called the First Credential Initiative that's being driven by the State Board of Education, and our local school districts are on board, where the goal is for every student when they graduate from high school to have some type of post-secondary credential, whether that's a career and technical education certificate or an academic certificate or something that just gives them that leg up so that their high school experience is not just getting a diploma, but getting that credential that leads to something additional down the road. And so this idea about this corrections pathway was like, yeah, let's do it, because folks are, probably not as tuned into the need as much as Director Garcia is, or you might be, Representative Gwynn, but certainly there's awareness there, and with a little bit of education, understanding the potential and the opportunities, people really want to be responsive to help students with as many pathways and options as possible.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot, and then when we come to you, I'm going to have you answer the same question. But one of the concerns we heard in committee was these are kids. They're 19 years old. They're probably not going to do well. They probably shouldn't be in that environment. They haven't lived life, and now they're going to be in with violent felons frequently and interacting them. They're not going to have any weapons. They haven't lived long enough to really kind of create a dialogue and de-escalate. And personally, I think that we need to do a better job of holding our youth to a higher standard, right? I think they're capable. I think the retention rates show that they're absolutely capable. And the policy, I think, has been a win for Utah Department of Corrections. But from your perspective in the education space, especially the university, dealing with these 19 and 20-year-olds, do you think that this is something that they should and would be able to do?
Some of my favorite debates to watch on the House floor are those when you're like dealing with this issue of when is someone an adult and a decision maker. And I say favorite just because you see it can be an issue and really difficult to grapple with. But the great thing about this and education generally is we have the ability to kind of meet students where they are and to help prepare them. And is every 18, 19-year-old capable of this? No, but there are an awful lot that are, and we shouldn't exclude them because, there are a few who might not be able to be successful in that situation. So by providing these educational opportunities, it gives students the chance to gain their own confidence that maybe they didn't know that they had, that they can do this type of thing, or maybe a student might self-select out, or maybe through not being able to demonstrate the competency, though they won't be someone that moves into a position like this. But there are some 45-year-olds who might not be capable of handling this. So I hate to see us just discriminate against everyone because of their age. And I think that we can find a way to navigate that path successfully. We do it all the time. We do it with nursing programs. We can put pretty, same age students. They can go through and get, their CNA and their LPN and be out as a registered nurse at the same age, administering all types of medication, having people's lives literally in their hands, or paramedics or other things. And so I think there's, probably the majority are capable of this. So we should absolutely make that opportunity available.
Love it. Appreciate it. All right, Jared, we're going to come to you. Can you talk briefly about how recruiting 19-year-olds has actually been impactful?
Yeah.
And positive for sure, but if there's anything that you're seeing that has been negative, maybe to make us aware?
Absolutely. I'm in a unique position because I've worked for the Department of Public Safety for 20 years, at the Utah Highway Patrol and State Bureau Investigation, and then, as you know, I moved on to be a chief of police in Moab. And at both of those places, we were struggling to hire during those times. We kind of have lost our middle class in law enforcement of experience over the last several years due to some national issues. And then I come full circle to corrections, a place I never thought that I would work as the deputy 2 years ago. And we arrived at 400 vacancies, over 400 vacancies, which was crazy because it led to mandatory overtime. It led to adult probation and parole officers working within the prison in an area that many of them had never worked, which led to safety issues. And at the end of the day, it leads to a really poor environment overall, an unsafe and unhealthy environment, and a place that's not sustainable for people to work long term. We don't want law enforcement or corrections to just be a job. We want it to be a career that they're invested in, a selfless career where they're working to help people to improve. And so without getting into a rant, I think, and you kind of already touched on this, corrections is really a misrepresented, underrepresented part of the criminal justice system. I know I offend my former law enforcement colleagues when I say this, but corrections is a much more difficult profession or part of the criminal justice system than law enforcement. They're equally as important. And so when it comes to this issue and the ability to hire 19-year-olds, people can view that as a challenge. Luckily, we've been able to get staff because of the support of the legislature, the governor's office, and many other stakeholders. We were paying our correctional officers $31 an hour, which is crazy to me at this phase of my career, but straight out of high school. It's an opportunity for us because we're bringing young people in early in their lives before they make these critical mistakes that you touched on, and we have a great opportunity to teach them how to do law enforcement, conduct corrections business in a professional way, in a thorough way, in a compassionate way, in a way where we can actually change the trajectory of people's lives, and at the end of the day, create better public safety outcomes in our community.
So, as I think about this, and again, I actually had a brief stint in corrections, and I always had the mindset that I wanted to be on the road, right? That's where I wanted to be. I knew corrections was a stepping stone, and for me, it was intended to only be a stepping stone. But I look back, and some of the officers that I went to the academy with, they actually did a full 20 years in corrections, and I looked at them, and I'm like, that's amazing, right? It's not for the faint of heart, obviously. But I will tell you, the one thing that was valuable that I got out of it was the ability to communicate, de-escalate, but also getting to know those in my community, right? How many of these offenders are going to be re-entering society? Most of them.
96%.
96%
are going to be our neighbors.
And so when I left corrections and I was on the road, I was actually taken back. I mean, this was long ago, so it's not happening as much now, if at all, but I would see some of these folks who were incarcerated at the time I was working there, and they would come up to me when they saw me in uniform, and they'd say hi, they'd say thank you, and they were actually really excited to tell me how well they were doing, right? And I got to see a side of people that the general public typically doesn't see, to include street officers, right? And so for the communication skills, those kinds of things, there's places across the country where you're required to work in corrections before you ever go on the road. I'm thankful that we don't have to do that here, because if they don't want to be there, I don't want them there. But to provide this opportunity for our young adults to graduate from high school, $31 an hour, learning how to communicate with society, working to improve people's lives, getting benefits for themselves and their families, I couldn't think of a much better place for us to be right now.
I agree. I think the principles, if you think about the principles of law enforcement and corrections, they're very similar in the fact that you have a population in the community, a population within the prison system that is very challenging, and some of them will never change their ways. And I'm talking about those that are involved in gang activity or violent acts. But the majority of folks in the prison, and if you think about even our folks that are experiencing homelessness, they need help. They want help, but they also need a safe space to receive the help. And so, to your point, we believe in corrections we can do it better. And it starts with that verbal communication, the mutual respect that you have to express to people. And to your point, when they leave, they're not all going to stay in corrections, and I'm okay with that. To your point, we need great police officers, we need great state troopers, we need great county sheriffs. We believe we can be a starting place to teach people how to be professional law enforcement, correctional officers, and they can take those communication skills out to the community, and at the end of the day, not just use their discretion, but use informed discretion to make great decisions that end in excellent public safety outcomes.
I totally agree. And I got to be quick. I want to thank Travis Reese, the director of Post. He's not with us today, but he's been supportive. He wants to see this curriculum move to where people can actually do this, maybe at some point online before they ever come down to Post. But I just want to make everyone aware that Travis has been a phenomenal partner in this. And the other thing I want to note too is we're doing this potentially without even writing a bill.
Yeah, we didn't have to write a bill. We didn't have to request any money. We just got together and decided, let's make it work.
It's crazy. Sometimes things work when you just get the right people in the room, right? Or when you ask the right questions to the right people. You guys are the experts on this part, not me. So anyway, any final thoughts that you would each like to share before we close out today?
Well, just for anyone who's listening out there, this is one example. There might be other areas, whether it's in the criminal justice system or other industry and fields. I think Weber State, the technical colleges, the other institutions of higher ed across the state really want to be responsive to help meet those needs. I know from my other colleagues, but we don't know what we don't know oftentimes, even though, we're supposed to be universities, we're supposed to be smart, but we need to learn how to better adapt and meet the needs of our communities and our state. So please come to us with ideas or suggestions, and oftentimes there might be a pretty easy solution that's just right there. We just need to uncover it.
I love coming to you with ideas. Jared, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say we have a whole generation of young people that are anxious and excited to make an impact in their community and to join corrections and law enforcement. We've experienced that with Jordan School District and Granite School District with a pilot we're doing with them to bring people into an internship, and they conduct aptitude testing and make sure that they're the right candidates to join our profession down the road. And so I just want to thank you and your colleagues for the support that you provided to the Utah Department of Corrections, because as you know, it's really not about us in public safety. It's about our community and keeping our community safe, and creating better pathways, more pathways to our profession is only going to help us to be better in the future.
And I appreciate having gentlemen like you in positions where we can actually have these conversations, take risks, move the ball, do that without maybe, writing a bill per se. But I also love Utah leading out, right? We talk about the cliche, right? The states are laboratories of democracy. This is clearly one of those opportunities where we can lead out as a state and create policy that may have ripple effects across the country. At least that's the hope. Anyway, I thank you guys for your time and for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Representative.